This is the I Read Comic Books podcast. I am your host, Mike Rapin. Joining me this week, three robots of varying size and shape who transform into objects exactly as we know them here on Earth. I'm joined by Danny.
Beep boop, beep boop, boop.
And Brian Murray.
I'm a toaster, baby.
Today we have a very special guest on this show, the one and only Kev from the Austin Danger podcast.
Hey guys, great to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. We've all made our version of the noise that comes from the Transformers movie. That makes me so happy. Before we get into things, I want to say thank you to everyone for coming to our hangout last night on Discord. It was really fun. If you're not part of the Discord, you should definitely check our show notes. Check out the link there. Join that. Come hang out with us and talk things like wrestling and F1 and comic books sometimes. A lot of Star Wars TV talk. The Ahsoka show has made people go absolutely bonkers on our server, which is very exciting. But we had a really fun hangout last night. We convinced our new pal Zach to go to Annapolis, I believe, in Maryland to go meet Tom King this morning. He canceled breakfast plans. He canceled all of his plans today just to go see Tom King, which is very fun. Apparently it was a successful visit and they got to chat and everything, which is cool. And we spent about an hour and some change talking about D&D and Starfinder and trying to organize potentially some one-shots on the Discord server. We'll see if something's going to come out of that. But for folks that are interested, make sure you join our Discord. Let's get into the show, though. We have a very special guest here. Kev, before we get into things, before I start asking the legally mandated questions that I have, I think the folks at home need to know why we've kept you behind the Patreon wall on our IRCB Movie Club episodes, and now we're finally bringing you out to the regular public feed because you're a very cool guy with a very cool podcast. So tell the folks at home a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am one of the hosts of Austin Danger Podcast, which is a randomly curated movie podcast that's been going on now for about a year and a half, or coming up on 2 years. And what we've done is we've thrown together a giant wheel of movies that all connect to the Austin Powers trilogy. And every week we spin that wheel and we pick one. And the links could be Mike Myers was in it, or the guy who drove him to set was involved, or
Yes.
the flautist who played on Soul Bossa Nova played on our films. Just this year alone, we've done movies like Transformers, which we'll talk about. We've done Terminator 2 Judgment Day, Rob Marshall's Chicago, AI Artificial Intelligence, Magnolia. We just wrapped up the Hercule Poirot trilogy by Kenneth Branagh. Why?
Amazing.
I'm still trying to figure out why, but it's done. As you're listening to this, our Haunting in Venice episode is out. And then we're going to do spooky movies only for the month of October. So very exciting times on Austin Danger Podcast.
Is there a particular spooky movie you're looking forward to?
The one we're doing next week was so scary. I wrote a letter to New Line Cinema asking them to pull the TV ads because they were too scary. So that one for sure. Also, Friday the 13th is on the wheel. Child's Play is on the wheel. Saw 1, which is a legitimately great, in my opinion, movie. So
yeah. Well, you have maybe one of the funniest, most interesting podcast concepts out there. It's why I continue to listen. I am admittedly a few episodes behind. I'm very excited to get into that trilogy you just mentioned. But Kevin, very excited to have you on the show. For folks that don't know, if you haven't heard the episodes or you haven't gone to the secret feed that's on Spotify, publicly available for everyone to check out, Kev was on our episodes where we talked about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Spider-Man, Across the Spider-Verse? I can never remember the name of that movie, but still, great episodes. You should go check those out. Go subscribe to the Patreon because Kev's an amazing guest. And I'm excited to have him here because today we are talking, as I mentioned at the end of last week's episode, we are talking about all of the Transformers movies in one episode. Ugh. I apologize in advance. This is probably going to be one of the longest episodes of IRCB in existence. So we got to get into things. And that is starting with me asking two legally mandated questions. And that is, how have you been? How have comic books been? Kev, I'm going to kick it back to you just because you're the new person on the show. So tell us what you've been up to.
Sure. So famously in the Discord, I love comics, but I am unable to follow them week by week for a couple of reasons. Number one, buying physical books is hard because I love my apartment here in New York City. I have a beautiful apartment that is 2 rooms, and none of those rooms are where comics go. So
right.
Physical books are a challenge. So I've resolved to reading on Marvel Unlimited and DC Universe Infinite. And then mooching off of friends who buy digital copies. So case in point, the first book I want to talk about, my favorite writer is Jonathan Hickman, easily, and Ultimate Invasion has got me back in. It has hooked me into catching up on everything I can. I love this series. Is anybody here reading this and are caught up?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I am in the same boat as you in that anytime Hickman puts out a book like this, it's the top of my pile. Like it's literally the first thing I have to read because I can't get spoiled. I just need to know what's happening.
Sure, sure. So it's not a spoiler to say if you are not familiar with this series, they've already announced that coming out of this mini series, which, we'll talk about the pricing of it in a moment, but like at the end of it, there will be a new Ultimate Universe beginning with an Ultimate Spider-Man ongoing written by Jonathan Hickman, which is super exciting. But if you're not familiar, basically there's a character called the Maker who is the evil Reed Richards from the Ultimate Universe, who has been causing trouble in Donny Cates' Venom and a bunch of other books, and it's all been building up to this idea of he is this character is going into universe 6160, which is of his own design, and he is changing things so that he's creating a universe in his own image. And so we have characters like Howard Stark, who is now relevant, of like there are all sorts of twists and turns and variations. And
Yeah.
I just learned that Cates was supposed to write this series, which is interesting, but I'm so happy that if it couldn't be him, that it is the man who gives us all those great graphs and charts.
and circular diagrams. I guess that's also a graph. I don't know.
Yes, exactly. And it's light on the text, I've found, in
Right,
2 and 3
right.
especially.
What's really funny about this series is that it feels very Hickman-esque, right? It feels very Secret Wars. It feels very
Yes.
like Secret Warriors in a lot of ways, but it also really, really, really channels what I feel like Mark Millar did so well with the original Ultimates, in that it's big, bombastic, dumb superhero bullshit done in like this, like in a way that it's like shoving candy bars down your throat because you haven't eaten anything in 24 hours, right? Like it somehow works, and I'm really excited to see how this concludes. Issue 4 is not out yet, right? It's coming out very soon.
Soon.
It's out Wednesday.
It's out on
right?
Wednesday. Okay.
This week or the next week, one of the two, yeah.
Yeah, it's coming out very soon, regardless. Very excited to see how he wraps this up to basically act as the springboard for whatever the future Ultimate line is going to be. So yeah, I've been very excited following you diving back into this, as well as a reader just diving into this, like really having given up on a lot of the Ultimate Universe years and years ago. Like Ultimatum, you ruined everything for me. So, yeah, totally feeling this. But Danny, what about you? I'm going to jump over to you. How have you been? How have comic books been?
Well, Mike, in between watching Transformers movies and reading comics and making 10 to 20 videos a day,
I wasn't going to say anything, Danny, but yeah, it feels like you have been literally in front of your camera almost 24/7, like those two teen couple people that, anyways, that's a weird TikTok drama thing. You've been
that is
making
a weird
YouTube
TikTok
videos.
drama. That's the other thing I'm doing. I'm rewatching Naruto on TikTok. So the best way to consume Naruto Shippuden is on 3-minute increments on TikTok, because you can
Hell
skip
yeah.
around all the things you don't want. Anyways, but so just to touch on Ultimate Invasion, I'm also very excited. I didn't read much of the Ultimate Universe, and even I can tell, like, Hickman is not subtle when he's doing like a callback to something, because even I recognize a callback to something I haven't even read. Like, that's how not subtle this book is. So I'm very excited for that. But what I'm also very excited for that I read this week is we got a new Wonder Woman book, Wonder Woman #1 from DC Comics, written by Tom King with art by Daniel St. Pierre, colors by Tom Murray, and letters by Clayton Cowles. The synopsis for this one is insane. Like, I didn't read the synopsis before going into the book, and I read it once afterwards. I was like, okay, yeah, this all kind of checks out. So, after a mysterious Amazonian is accused of mass murder, Congress passes the Amazon Safety Act, barring all Amazons from U.S. soil. To carry out their plan, the government tasks a new force called the Amazon Extradition Entity, aka AXE, to remove anyone who does not comply. I didn't know that's
Danny,
what this book.
Is this the real plot? Are you joking?
This is it.
That's amazing.
If you like Enemy of the State, that's what's happening to Wonder Woman right now. So, yeah,
this feels like Tom King, who lives in like the Washington D.C. area, just can't get away from like the U.S. government bullshit. Like, I love Tom King. I love the work that he's done and some of the stuff that he's written, but this to me feels like some weird Like some senator got in his ear and was like, "Listen, Mr. King, we need you to test out some stuff in these very murky waters called comic books. What happens if?" And I feel like it's getting filtered into this. I'm not going to say the word psyop, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Uh,
We're not going to get political, but the most unbelievable thing is that Congress would pass an act so quickly
Yeah.
in this book. But
You know, Josh Hawley would hold the thing up for 20 years.
right. Daniel St. Pierre's art is amazing. Very clean lines, very traditional comic book style, but I don't mind because it's so good. Like, I like when artists experiment, but if you're not going to experiment, then just give me like some of the cleanest work you can find.
yeah.
And look, King is already planting a lot of seeds for, if anybody read the Wonder Woman 800 story that he did, like all that's already in the background, but you can tell this arc is going to be something way different than I've ever read in Wonder Woman. Granted, I haven't read all the stuff. I do feel this is going to be a bit divisive of a run, but I mean, I think most Wonder Woman runs are just by nature of the character.
Sure.
But I recommend it. I obviously picked up a bunch of variants for it because DC loves printing out really cool stuff. They made a foil one, Artgerm did one, and then of course a blank variant, so I can get my own very own Wonder Woman drawn eventually when I go to convention, right? So
Maybe by Tom King. I've seen his Batman covers. They're beautiful.
I love Tom King. I don't know if I would waste a blank cover on his sketch.
Sure.
Unless I had a spare one. So but
Maybe the
that's
meanest thing I've ever heard Danny say.
Thank you, Brian. Sometimes I have moments of clarity in between all the other nonsense.
Well, you know, this book to me sounds good. I've heard a lot of really positive things from folks. Danny, it sounds like you really dug this book. Our Wonder Woman expert on the Discord server, our good pal Hannah, is screaming so good, which to me says like I need to check this book out, because if Hannah's giving it a thumbs up, who's in, like I said, Wonder Woman expert, I definitely got to check it. So that sounds fun. I mean, why am I not just automatically trying new Tom King #1s at this point? But that's a whole other question. Brian, though, gotta know, how have you been? How have comic books been? Let's jump over to you.
I've certainly been.
Right.
I forgot to do all my prep for this episode. So instead of watching a Transformers a day for the last week, I tried to watch all of the Transformers between Friday and now.
Oh my god.
Today's Sunday for anyone at home.
So I hear that transforming noise every time I close my eyes. I did find a little bit of time to read comics. I went back and read Starfinder #2, which was my pick for like what I'm reading next a while back. This is written by James Sutter with art by Edu Mena. It still feels much like Starfinder #1. It very much feels like a Starfinder game, which I really enjoy. In this issue, our intrepid space heroes arrive at the planet they're looking for and discover a very Star Wars-y setup where you've got like this thick fog bank, and there's a species that lives below the clouds and a species that lives above the clouds. And there's, drama, of course, between those two species.
Of course.
They wind up finding what is essentially an angel of the machine god has taken up residence here.
Yeah.
And they are put into a fight to the death against a dragon man who they offended in the last issue.
Okay. As you said, this tracks with Starfinder gameplay, so totally following this. So, but you're liking the series so far? I mean, like, obviously, you and I, we've played quite a bit of Starfinder together, but the series is working for you beyond just that first issue hook?
Yeah, I think that like anybody who has played Starfinder or is a fan of the game will get more out of this book, but I do think that anyone who likes like a good sci-fi romp could still pick up this book and enjoy it, even if you've never heard of Starfinder.
That's exciting.
I was talking to my buddy Josh because he reads the Pathfinder comic books, and I told them like what they should do is if you read the comics for whatever game you're playing, that should have some kind of in-game consequence, like maybe you get like a little power-up or a boost or something in-game. Like if they were smart enough, because there's games that do that. If you play Munchkin, like Munchkin does that. Like if you just wash your hands or something, like you'll get like a little boost and there's a card for it. Like they should do that with Starfinder or Pathfinder or all these D&D comics that you can buy, to get people to buy them more often.
They do have there is Starfinder game content that you can only get in the back of these comics.
What,
So like I have issue number 1 in front of me right now. There is a whole playable species that is like created in the back of this. It appears to be like a take on the kitsune from Pathfinder.
That's so cool.
Huh.
I mean, like, I appreciate the dedication to like distributing lore in a very interesting way that is going to make people in 10 years go, why the fuck was it just in this one comic book that's no longer being printed and the digital files were lost? I love that.
Yeah. It takes me back to my D&D 3.5 days of like trying to hunt down a feat that was in one issue of Dragon magazine 14 years ago.
Exactly. But cool. I'm glad to hear the comic is still fun. But let me talk about a book that I read. I guess as I said, I played a lot of Baldur's Gate. I think I was saying this before. I don't remember. Time is a flat circle that I can't comprehend. And so I've been playing Baldur's Gate since it finally released on the Mac. For like the last 48 hours, which is fun. As I said in the last episode of the show, I did go out and play Pokemon again because there was a community day. So, got my good 23 shinies, which I feeling very good about. Did collect a perfect IV Pokemon for anyone at home that cares. So doing really well, feeling pretty good. Got a shiny legendary as part of a random raid I got invited to. Guys, I'm having a great weekend. So I did read some comics though. I did read a book called Migrate. This is by Shan Murphy. It's a really little comic, just like a book that I found on itch.io. I've been following Shan's work on and off like through Twitter for like 5, 6, 7 years. Just like every little book that they've put out, I've tried to pick up in some fashion. And I grabbed this as part of a bundle of books that they were doing to help promote some charity fundraising I can't remember the name of. But yeah, this is a cute little book about like two birds that are, long distance partners because one of them migrates every year. And there's this idea of how long distance relationships can be very, very hard, especially if you're a bird that doesn't migrate and your partner is someone that does migrate. And so there's this question of like, do I just move to go with them and we can stay down south forever together, or do I just continue this relationship of just seeing them half the year? It's a really nice little book. And I've kind of given the whole story away, but like nonetheless, it's a very nice read. Like it's very short. You can get it for name your own price. I suggest throwing Shan a couple bucks. But yeah, this is a fun, cute little book. And yeah, I love this kind of stuff. Every once in a while, you just crack open a PDF and you kind of like makes your heart get a little warmer or break in half a little bit. But yeah, this book is very nice. So yeah, I'm going to kick things back over to Kev, though. Have you read anything else, I guess, before we move into the top of our pile?
Yeah, I want to very quickly give a One Piece update because, as I very loudly said like 6 months ago in Discord, I was going to try to get caught up on One Piece this year. And as always, with big promises I make on the internet, that hasn't really happened.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on chapter 152 or 3. I'm still in the Alabasta storyline. It's just reached kind of a climax where this is my big issue with Oda's art. Luffy did some cool looking stuff that I barely could make out. So I'm reading this book on the M2 iPad Pro. This is like I'm not bragging. This is just the truth. I got this as a gift. This is the biggest and best screen I could be reading comics on in the palm of my hand, right? Some of this gum stuff, I can't tell what happens at all. I think somebody stepped on somebody's hand and I spent 5 minutes like panning and zooming and trying to get my head around it. So sometimes the action is a little bit hard to make out on the app. Maybe that's just me. I don't know.
No. Kev, let me be completely clear. I read all of One Piece, and there are definitely multiple moments of action where I said, that's just a series of lines, and I can't recognize real shapes in there. But it feels like it connects to the next panel or next page. So I'm just going to assume that by the context of what happens later, that action is a result of of what happened later. That's kind of how I viewed a lot of One Piece in the first couple hundred chapters.
So that's a concern. I hope that
Yeah.
cleans up a little bit. But I will say I am really enjoying it. And I think the thing I love the most is how Oda can find new angles to pluck the same heartstrings over and over and over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
You are my friend. We're a found family. I respect you, teacher. I made a promise to you and I'm going to keep it. All pretty much in circles in new, interesting ways with new, interesting characters. And it's only
Mhm.
getting better and better. And I'm having a great time. I have 938 chapters left as of today. And that number is just climbing and climbing. Will I
Mhm.
ever get caught up? I'm confident that I will be caught up for the last chapter. When that is, we'll never know. My son will read it to me from my deathbed at this point.
Well, how about this? Maybe you'll be caught up by the time they finish the TV series.
Yes.
With the supposed planned 6 seasons and 10 seasons total, in very heavy quotes here. But, it's funny that you mentioned this idea of like Oda constantly hitting on the same notes over and over. If you watch the show, if you do the thing that Netflix wants you to do, which is binge the live action TV show, at this point, by the end of the series or end of the season, I was like, okay, I get it. You all have dreams and you're trying to accomplish them. That's it, because it's repeated about 5 to 6 times every single episode. So maybe that's just a thing of the manga that I missed. But I feel like it's a little bit more spread out. But that's probably because there's just more padding in the manga in general. So.
Oh, it definitely is, but it's a feature, not a bug. I'll say, like
Right.
I really enjoy that.
It's funny that you mentioned the idea of your son reading it to you on your deathbed, because I was having dinner with my dad last week, and there's a lull in the conversation, and this 72-year-old man goes, "So have you heard of One Piece?"
Wow.
And I had to look at him and be like, "How have you heard about One Piece?" And it turns out that he watched the first episode of the Netflix show. So
Did he like it?
he was confused.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
But at this point, my father has seen more One Piece content than I have. So that's just a weird dynamic we have now.
Interesting. Very interesting. Danny, what else have you been reading?
Well, let me give my unannounced One Piece update, because I also said I was going to read it at the beginning of the year.
Sure.
I read one volume and I stopped. Sorry. But I love the live action show, so I'm a One Piece fan regardless.
Yeah.
It's just so much easier to consume in 8 episodes of TV. And I think it covered 6 volumes from what I'm told, what I did the research on.
Yeah, just about.
And now I just get little bits of it on TikTok, like the anime. So that's how I like my content now. 3 minutes at a time, with no context before or after. If it's good enough, I'll go hunt down the next part. Speaking of the next part, let me give you another update. This is the God of War update.
I gotta completely interrupt you because Paul asked a question in the chat that I feel like I have to address, which is, what's One Piece? And
don't worry about it.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about that in the post show. How about that? Another Patreon perk. We've got a post credit show. I think we'll talk to Paul about that there. But go ahead, Danny. Sorry to interrupt you.
In the meanwhile, search your heart, Paulie. See if you can find the answer. Another update we have, the Gotham War update, because that's also happening over at DC Comics. Today, it's all DC all the time for me.
Sure.
So I read Catwoman
Today.
57. Yeah. Catwoman 57. This is part 3 of the Gotham War, written by Tini Howard with art by Nico Leon, colors by Veronica Gandini, letters by Lucas Gattoni. For those that don't know, at this moment, Batman is poor. Well, poor in quotes, not like poor like everyone else is poor. Batman has slept for the past 8 months. Go see Night Terrors for that.
Okay.
And in the meanwhile, Catwoman solved violent crime in Gotham while he was away. So
Okay.
Batman doesn't like this, because the way she did that is like, I'm just gonna train everyone and give them jobs as non-violent criminals. So there's still crime, it's just non-violent crime. And Batman's like, not about that. He's like, any crime is bad crime, so I'm gonna stop it regardless. And Batman is wrong on this one. Like, somebody just needs to give him a hug and tell him, "Are you okay, bro? Like you're not doing very well." So this story is kind of helmed by both Chip and Tini Howard. So it's really fun.
Okay.
It's going out throughout their books. The Bat family is kind of split on except for Damian. Damian's also on the same side of Bruce, because he's the same when it comes to crime. No criminal should
He
be
just
allowed.
wants to hurt people.
I'll say Damian wants the violent crime back.
Yeah.
I think my favorite part of this is that Jason Todd just like he really loves getting on Bruce's nerves. So he immediately is like, "Yep, I'm with you, Catwoman. Let's do this. Let's stop crime this way." So it's a really fun story. If you're not reading weekly, I would say wait till it's collected because this goes over like there's like a one shot, a Batman book, a Catwoman book, then there's another one shot. So it's gonna be hard to follow if you just walk into the store and you're like, "Huh? Where do I read this?"
I again, we're going to talk about this in the break, but I don't understand the need for the big two to break up stories like this to the point of it's, again, like you said, it's going to be confusing to read.
Right.
It's a whole other
So
conversation.
if you have questions,
Yeah.
put them in the Discord. I'll tell you how to read it until it's
That's
collected.
true. Danny is a
Um,
great resource for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, we have plenty of Batman enthusiasts in the Discord,
That's
so
true.
we're up for the call. So yeah, but that's about it on that one.
Before we go to the top of our pile, let me talk about one more book that I read, and that is Sakamoto Days, chapters 1 through 15. This is by Yuto Suzuki. For those of you that don't know, Taro Sakamoto used to be an unrivaled hitman, earning legendary status in the underworld, but one day the unthinkable happened. Sakamoto fell in love. He started dating, retired, got married, and had a kid, growing overweight as a result. Though now working as a humble convenience store owner, the world of hitmen still follows him. Sakamoto, along with Shin, a young man with telepathy and an employee at his small store, will protect his humble life and family or die trying. This is the dumbest comic book I've read in a very long time, and I absolutely love it. From the start, the book it's kind of slow. It kind of falls into that new series in Shonen Jump slump of like one-off chapters to establish some characters with a lot of really just typically like or stereotypical just like manga gags and stuff, but this is a gag manga, so they're kind of just doubling down on what I think they know sells in terms of like making people laugh. The fat jokes are not really fat jokes so much as this guy has a lot of extra skin, so we're going to use it comedically, which is both weird and funny at the same time. But it does kind of remind me, I think by the time I got to like chapter 8, 9, and 10, the story really did start to pick up. We got some established lore of this hitman assassin world, which is over the top and stupid, very much like a One Punch Man, where it decides to give you some story that's very serious and then immediately breaks all the tension with like a really dumb one-line joke. So I appreciate that. But yeah, it's kind of fun. Like the art in this book is very goofy in that it feels like it's inspired by Sailor Moon and with this like modern twist on like a retro style of manga. It compared to something like a more, I want to say, modern book like a Jujutsu Kaisen or Kaiju number 8, where everything is like very clean lines with very like defined features. Even One Punch Man is kind of in this same vein. This book feels very old style in just the way that it's laid out and the way that some of the characters' faces are drawn. They've got the big shiny eyes and like these little tiny mouths and tapered chins, with the exception of Taro Sakamoto, who has just this big round pill-like head. But yeah, it's a funny book. The art's good. Don't get me wrong, it's just kind of funny. Yeah, I don't know, if you're looking for a good gag manga, you could do worse. However, I do think that Way of the House Husband is a funnier manga, so if you're going to compare the two, just go pick up Way of the House Husband because it's funny from page 1. Unrelated though, I did hear that the Jujutsu Kaisen are getting fucking insane because of the latest chapter. So if anyone knows about what's going on with that drama, I am not caught up. I hate that manga. It sucks. It ruined itself, and I don't know why. And I haven't even gotten to the dramatic chapter, so like I don't know. Anyways, go ahead, Danny. Sorry.
I was gonna say careful of spoilers for sure with the JJK.
Yeah.
But
I'll leave it there.
if you ever watched the John Wick movies and thought, why aren't these funny in a comedy? Then you want to read Sakamoto Days because that's
Yes.
like as each movie gets more ridiculous, but also builds the world. Sakamoto Days also, as the chapters go by, they also just kind of build this like criminal underground and like there's a lot of action, but like it's also just the gag of it. So yeah, that's
Yes.
the best way I can pitch it. And I know we kind of hate pitching with like other things, but I know not everyone is like, I don't know, Sakamoto Days doesn't sound like anything to me. So
Yeah, I think that the John Wick comparison is valid, right? I think that Sakamoto Days has a little bit more heart and soul to it because there is like this loving family kind of at the center of this book that the book definitely 1000% revolves around, which is very funny and allows for a lot of the goofier moments. But yeah, it does have that same feel of like there's clearly a very specific assassin world that Sakamoto used to work in, and we are slowly but surely getting pieces of that as the series goes on. So first 15 chapters overall, I like it. I definitely want to keep reading it, and I think there's only like 100 and some chapters out there, so hopefully I'll be able to finish this by the end of the year, and then maybe I'll go and hate read Jujutsu Kaisen before the entire world tears it apart, or at least my TikTok algorithm does. But let's move on before I start saying too many weird things beyond already what I've said, and talk about books that are on the top of our pile, comics that are new or old, or something that you're just trying to read off of your shelf. Let me kick things over to Brian. What is on the top of your pile? Or actually, before I get into that, I'm sorry. Let me shout out some folks that are hanging out with us on Discord, because I don't mean to forget you. We got some people that are hanging out with us, and they're very cool. And they are reading. Hugh is reading Blade #3, Matt is reading Jean Grey #2, CK is reading The Ex-Wives of Frankenstein, and Hannah is reading Craven's Last Hunt. So thanks for hanging out with us today. But Brian, let's jump over to you.
It's interesting. I don't mean to steal from you, Hugh, but my pick is also Blade #3. I did not know that there was a new Blade series coming out until I was like getting prepped for this episode, and so I guess Blade #1 is probably the top of my pile. But
yeah.
I'm excited. I love a good vampire story, and I haven't read any Blade before. I've meant to read Blade, and I've checked out Blade from the library, but I've never actually read it. So so who knows? Maybe this will be the thing that finally turns me into a Blade fan.
Well, and this is written by Brian Hill, who is, in my opinion, awesome. Like I've loved everything that I've picked up from him, so I think you'll probably have a good time.
And Casa Grande's art, like if you read that Black Widow book that won an Eisner, like it's beautiful stuff. Yeah, the one with Kelly Thompson. So
yeah,
I knew that name was familiar.
Yeah, you're in for some good-looking vampire action at least, Brian. So
fantastic.
And I grew up on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so good-looking vampires is kind of my thing.
Well, let us know how it is, Brian, once you get a hold of it. But Kev, what's on the top of your pile this week?
Yeah, so my DC Universe Infinite trial is running out, so I decided to finally talking about all DC and talking about Hard to Follow. I'm trying to get caught up on the stuff that I missed in the Infinite Frontier era, as I'm trying to come on to the books again with Dawn of DC. And I'm starting with the Warworld saga, which it's the Philip Kennedy Johnson Action Comics run from 2021 through, I believe, late last year, where Superman is banished to Warworld under Mongol. And it's this very pulpy story. I've only just started it. You don't really need to read the prelude stories, I don't think. Danny, could you confirm?
No, you're good going into this by itself, yeah.
Yeah, but even so, I mean, I'm just going to read some of this. It's 3 issues of Superman, then 2 issues of Superman and Action Comics back to back, then 2 issues of Superman. But then it's all Action Comics all the way down, so that's good news. And DC Universe Infinite did a great job of laying all that out. So I'm excited to jump back in, and I'm open to hear any and all Infinite Frontier era recommendations as well. I know the Chip Zdarsky run of Batman that's continuing, as well as Detective Comics, is on that list, and I'm open to hear all recommendations as I work my way through.
Yeah, so please come find Kev on the Discord and let him know what you think. I guess let me talk about a book that I'm reading next, and that is Newburn #11. This is by Chip Zdarsky with art by Jacob Phillips, with backups by David Brothers and Nick Dragata. I really just can't get enough of this book. For those of you that don't necessarily know, Newburn is a story about a fixer. He's a guy who does the jobs for the mob to make sure, or for the mobs in New York City, to make sure that they kind of stay cool with each other. So if they need a problem solved, he's the person to do it, like solving a murder of one mafia's, I don't know, henchman who was potentially killed by another mafia's henchman. He tries to figure out, squash the beef. He takes on a new protege, and she's kind of learning the ropes and figuring out like how he does things. But right now in the series, we're in the middle of one of those Prestige, Sopranos, Breaking Bad, Mad Men moments where the lead character is doing something mysterious, despite us all having a grip on the world and where this story takes place and how this character works. He's doing something strange and maybe out of character, and we're getting the perspective of what's happening through his protege, Emily, where she kind of says, can I trust this guy? Is he doing something that could potentially harm me, harm himself? And I just like I love those types of moments in TV, and I feel like Zdarsky is nailing that vibe in this comic book by creating this kind of mystery within Newburn to say what exactly is he trying to accomplish with the almost erratic choices he's making in the series. I love this book. Jacob Phillips is top notch here. I know we've been talking a lot about Enfield Gang Massacre, another top tier book that he's doing, but I feel like if you want that noirish feel, he's definitely kicking ass with Newburn. And yeah, I love the way that Zdarsky paces this series. Yeah, this book rules. I can't help but just sing its praises nonstop. So yeah, I really want everybody to read this. And one more thing, I guess, Danny, before I pass this over to you, so you can give your top of your pile. There is a quick list of very insane comic books that are coming out this week that I saw on League of Comic Geeks. One of them is Fuck a Duck #2. Another one is Millennials, You Are Special #1, and Poontang #1 is also coming out. Now, Fuck a Duck and Poontang seem to be books that are kind of like comics with an X, you know, kind of that like underground indie publishing. They're for mature readers, you know, people experimenting with some stuff. Millennials, You Are Special #1 definitely feels like a very hard conservative leaning book that's trying to be like owning the libs. So don't pick up any of these books as far as I'm concerned, but just had to throw that out there because I can't believe that sometimes comics like this are getting published and they're being listed on League of Comic Geeks of all places. Anyways, Danny, what's on the top of your pile?
Well, Mike, before we take a break and I go get my avocado toast, let me tell you about what I'm reading next week. Now, I may not be able to buy a house, but I will be able to pick up The Flash #1 from DC Comics. This is written by Cy Spurrier with art by Mike Deodato Jr., colors by Trish Mulville, and letters by Asan Otsmane Elhau. In this one, so this book follows Wally, which is already a plus for me. I love Wally. He's my favorite Flash. I like all the Flashes, but Wally's just my favorite. So Wally West has never been quicker and more fulfilled, more heroic, his loving family all around him, and yet something is off, very off, because Cy Spurrier is writing this book. His evolving understanding of his powers in Wally opens to new avenues of sci-fi adventures and attune his senses to strange new ideas. There's a lot more to this synopsis, but I'm just going to say, I want weird Flash comics where I don't know what's happening, but as long as his family's around too, like, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I want the Flash family. I want weird stuff happening. I think Cy Spurrier can deliver. So I'm very excited to check this #1 issue. The cover is super sick. And as I mentioned, it's a Wally West book, so I got to at least check it out.
Do you know if Deodato Jr. is going to continue on this book long term, or is it probably like for the first 5 issues?
I'm hoping it's the first arc only. I don't know.
Okay.
He's usually super busy doing like only AWA books, so maybe this is a one-off.
Exactly. That's well, and like I know his art style is a lot, right? But the fact that you said Cy Spurrier is on this, I might have to check this out. This might be a DC Infinite Universe wait for me, but like I usually don't pick up the Flash, and I may be picking up the Flash just because Cy Spurrier's on this. So thanks for bringing this to my attention. But yeah, we're gonna take a quick break here. We're all going to take a couple deep breaths. And then when we come back, we're going to be talking about all of the Transformers movies. So full spoilers ahead, but I know we've got a lot in store. So we'll be back in just a minute. For our show this week, as I said, we are talking about the Transformers movie franchise. That's all 7 movies. That's Transformers 2007, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen 2009, Transformers Dark of the Moon 2011, Transformers Age of Extinction in 2014, Transformers The Last Night 2017, Bumblebee 2019, and Transformers Rise of the Beasts from this year, 2023. It was a lot of movie. It was 17 hours-ish I clocked in. I gave this idea out to the folks here on the show today a couple months ago. I think it was like 2 months ago. I said Transformers. I think I listened to an episode of a podcast. Kevin, might have even been your podcast, where you guys were talking about Transformers. And I said, we got to do this. There's a new comic book series coming out. We're going to talk about Transformers movies, and then we're going to talk about comics. So here we are. We're here to talk about Transformers. I guess the first thing I want to do today is I kind of want to talk to the 3 of you, get your histories, your overall initial thoughts about this franchise. So I guess, Kev, let's start with you. what's your history with the Transformers movies? And based on everything that you've been put through over the past couple of weeks in preparation for the show, where are you at with the Transformers movie franchise?
You know, it's funny. The Transformers series is kind of baked into my movie going DNA. I was
Okay.
there opening night with my friends for the first one. And I think, you know, it's funny is in thinking about it, in revisiting for Austin Pod, which we did earlier this year, and in thinking about it since then in preparation for the show, I'm pretty sure that 75% of my warm feelings about this franchise are because of the Cloverfield teaser that played before the movie on opening night. Because
Amazing.
I remember us walking out and our first reactions were, wow, I can't believe they're going to do Godzilla.
Yeah.
Which is what everybody thought. If you don't remember, before Transformers, Paramount had a teaser for a movie that ended up being Cloverfield. It was like this found footage thing. It was a big surprise, and they didn't say the name of the movie. They just said like 1/17/08, which was the release date of Cloverfield.
Right.
So maybe I'm just confused. But then I would go on to, I saw Revenge of the Fallen in IMAX, which was a mistake. And then Dark of the Moon, I was working at the movies and I saw it 2 or 3 times. I think that one's pretty good. And then I fell off and then caught up over the pandemic, and here I am. Yeah, Rise of the Beast, of course, I saw this year, and here I am.
Okay, well, that's a very different journey than my own. But I'm before I start to unpack that, I guess I want to jump over to Danny. Danny, what's your history with the Transformers series? What's your overall thoughts? I guess how did you feel after the prep for this show?
Well, Mike, as a citizen of Unicron, I feel stronger now that I've seen all these films. I think much like Kev, and I think we're all around the same age groups. Like these movies were coming out, we were like, oh, yeah, cool, let's go. Like just going to the movies was fun at the time. Like no matter what was, if the movie was good on the screen, that was a plus. But like the fact that you get to go out with your friends and go to the movies unsupervised, like that was already a win. For a long time, I had a Mandela effect where I thought I went to watch Cloverfield for the Transformers trailer. But recently, when I think it was when you guys did the episode, Kev, it was like, wait a minute, it was backwards. I got Cloverfield in the Transformers film. Anyways, we'll save that for the Cloverfield episode.
Sure.
But overall revisiting these, I think I like them less and less the more I watched until the reboot. Because I never even saw The Last Night. This is my first watch of The Last Night for this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into all the details, but like I just can't believe. Like my most surprising thing was like, who wasn't in these movies eventually? Like, right? They got everyone, even Linkin Park. So very excited
Especially
to get into
Linkin
it. Yeah,
Park.
especially Linkin Park. Yeah. Until I guess they stopped putting out albums, and I was like, oh, I guess I'll just use Imagine Dragons for this one, and then they took over from then. So
Gen Z's Linkin Park. I get it. Yeah. Brian, then I guess with you, what's your history? How are you feeling?
I mean, with these movies, at least, my history is almost exactly like yours, because I'm pretty sure that we went and saw 2 and 3 like with our group of college friends.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I was 18 when the first one came out, so I was like right in that demo pocket.
Right.
I definitely like have not watched these in a solid decade. The last one that I watched before this Weekend from Hell was number 4, I think, and I don't think I finished it because I definitely got to the end of my rewatch and was like, did I know there were dinosaurs in this? Like I knew there were dinosaurs on the poster, but
right.
You missed the best part of that movie.
Yeah. We'll get to it.
Well, maybe best part. Okay. Let me just go over my history with these movies. Because I don't remember seeing Transformers 1 in theaters. I'm pretty sure this was like I pirated it or something like that. 2007-ish sounds about right for me. I think with Brian, I think I went to the movie theater, but I have no vivid memories of these movies.
We went to the midnight premiere for 2 because I remember going with you and me and Kyle and Jared, I think.
Okay. See, this is blanked out. Like this is how not impactful the second movie is. Even right now,
you forgot to protect yourself.
even even right now, I can't tell you the plot of Revenge of the Fallen right now. I'm gonna just say that. Anyways, but yeah, I think 3 was the last one that I had seen. So Age of Extinction, The Last Night, Bumblebee, Rise of the Beast were all brand new watches for me this time around, which means that I was experiencing a lot over the last month and a half. I was trying to watch one of these a week, and I did pretty well with that up to the end. So yeah, I'm feeling very torn. I'm feeling very confident about how I feel about our ending of this episode. Today, we're going to make sure that we all rank our picks or rank everything that we've seen, so we can talk about it. But yeah, there's definitely a lot to unpack here. So I don't necessarily want to go through every movie by movie, but obviously we have to talk about some of the big things, and I think that is the lineup of main stage actors in these movies, right? Like the voice of Optimus Prime, I believe, was consistent throughout the series, but changing the main focus of characters between these movies, going from Shia LaBeouf to Marky Mark to Anthony Ramos in the main series, and then Bumblebee kind of living in this alternate universe, starring Edge of 17's
Haley Steinfeld.
Haley Steinfeld, thank you. I wanted to say Katie Holmes, and that was definitely wrong, so thank you. Totally different vibe, I think, if that was Katie Holmes. But anyway, so I'm curious, what were your thoughts as like the first trilogy has this Shia LaBeouf with Megan Fox getting dropped out from being, if I'm not mistaken, fired from the series, and then we move over to Marky Mark, and then we've got these other characters. So I guess, like, what do you guys think? Kev, let's start with you. What were your overall thoughts here?
Yeah, the lore is already so disorienting. I don't even know because for years I was like, oh, but Transformers 1 is really good. And I'll give you anything else. You could say anything else about the series, but the first one. And then I came back to it and it's like, the lore is not great. I'm not crazy about these human characters to begin with. By the time we're at The Last Night, I'm like, who even is this? Right? I don't think they sell the transition at all. And it's clear that no matter how much they talked about the writer's room, because before The Last Night, if you remember, they were like, oh no, it's cool, man. We have a writer's room now of all your least favorite Hollywood screenwriters. It really was a murderer's row of like Batman and Robin, Amazing Spider-Man 2, Star Trek Into Darkness. It's like all these movies that people don't like. We got them in a room. They'll turn something.
And that's how we got Cogman.
We'll get to Cogman. I have a lot to say. Skybound, stay tuned. I got a lot to say about Cogman.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was never, in the grand scheme of things, it was never that important who the humans were. Like the Witwicky line will always interact with the series. But what matters, I guess, is that they are friends with the Transformers and create that bond, as Bumblebee makes clear. But I never felt anything about any of these characters.
Yeah.
Even Sam. I mean, I liked Sam just fine. I think Shia was like a solid through line through the first trilogy. But after Shia leaves, I can't bond with Marky Mark like that. I'm just not wired to do that.
Yeah.
It's very funny to hear you say that, because if I could kill Sam Witwicky with my bare hands, I would do it.
But you know what? If I were forced to watch 8 or however many, I don't even know how many there are, Transformers movies in 48 hours, I would also probably say the same thing.
I was there within 20 minutes of the start of the first one.
Yeah.
He is a walking sexual harassment case.
Well,
yeah, pretty much.
It's very 2007. Like,
right.
But still.
1997, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
All of these movies have that same through line of like solid 2002 misogyny.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Notice how I did not mention a woman once in that entire appraisal of the characters, because they're like, where are they?
Because they have Megan Fox, kind of.
Right.
And they misuse her horribly.
Yeah. I mean, Mark Wahlberg cares about his daughter.
Yo, what was going on there? Okay, this is a 3-hour movie about robot dinosaurs, but we needed the insert shot on the Romeo and Juliet laminated card in the wallet.
Yeah.
And do you know how far into the movie that takes place? It's almost 40 minutes in.
That's right.
Yeah. I guess
Danny, I gotta say, I gotta intervene, because the thing that offends me the most about these films is that, as somebody who lives in Texas, Cade Yeager as portrayed by Marky Mark is not what I think of when I think of Texas. Like, I've been to parts of Texas where it's like just farm country. There's nobody out there that looks or talks like Mark Wahlberg. I'll tell you that much. Uh, I think from all the protagonists, I think Haley Steinfeld is probably my favorite, just because I felt like that's when the movies got good or better again.
Sure.
And also, and I really enjoyed the last one too. Anthony Reyes, like I could really connect, and I was like, oh yeah, this dude, like I kind of like the '90s vibe that they gave it. So I was like,
Oh yeah.
I grew up with people like Anthony Reyes, like his character, right? Not exactly in that situation, because growing up in New York and Texas is still very different,
Sure.
but similar. But I feel like the strength of the cast is not in the protagonist; it's in the surrounding people, like Josh Duhamel, constant throughout all those films. Like that dude made a career of playing the army guy in
Oh
whatever
my
army
God.
position. Like he's in every army, whatever army position they need him in a movie, he's there. John Turturro's performance just became more unhinged every film, and that was really nice to watch. So yeah, that's kind of my take on the protagonist. Sam Witwicky, like take him or leave him, whatever. His parents are a lot of fun. I think
His
I
parents
want
are a
their
lot
movie.
of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want their movie. Like, show me what they were doing in that vacation when
Yeah,
they
their
came back to
road
Big
trip.
Island.
Danny, that's an NC-17 movie. You can't put that on screen.
I love Kevin Dunn as the father Witwicky. I love him. He shows up in a lot of our movies on Austin Pod, and he is the best. And he's great in Veep too.
Oh my God, dude, him in Veep is maybe one of my favorite characters in television history, right? Like just absolutely atrocious and awful in the best ways. But yeah, I very much feel the same way as you guys do about like the main cast in this. Haley Steinfeld was like a breath of fresh air after Mark Wahlberg just tried to exist, or Marky Mark was in The Last Night. I don't know, following The Last Night up with Bumblebee was like, oh, this franchise does know how to make films. I didn't really care for Bumblebee, but like it was by and large much better than The Last Night. And I think like Anthony Ramos, just I love that guy on screen in general. So like I kind of am biased in that like anytime he's in something, I'm kind of like, oh right, this is gonna be fine. Because I feel like he's had a lot of really good roles. I even liked him in the Heights, and that's my own personal feelings, you know. But still, I feel like Shia LaBeouf's wait will always live in my heart. You know what I mean? There's no one that can do that better than him. Like, and so I will always appreciate that. But yeah, that being said, I still really have like this fondness for Dark of the Moon of all of the movies. So like I still have to appreciate like what happened. And like this kind of moves into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which was the canon of these stories. And I know that like we talk about how canon can be kind of like a hamstringing mechanic in all of these, in movies and in comics and stuff. But the one thing I did appreciate about Transformers 1 through 5 is that there is a shared continuity that somehow exists where Chicago is just destroyed, and it becomes this like central spot of just active military presence that is a desert, and it's an ocean, and it's in the middle of America, all at one place in one time. And I loved how stupid that was and how consistent they were. Like somebody in a writer's room was like, if we don't keep Chicago destroyed, I'm gonna fucking shoot somebody. Like I don't know why they didn't just have it cleaned up, but I appreciated that it stayed destroyed, and everything that happened was like Autobots. I don't know. There was a through line to those first 5 movies that I still had to appreciate, despite their absurdity.
Yeah, I feel like the individual movies were not always terribly coherent, but like the overall storyline did make sense.
Yeah. For in the same sense that any Transformers story can make sense, but like
Yeah.
that is the thing about these movies, is like there is a lore here that like it's like eating something that doesn't taste very good, but every once in a while you get a pocket of something sweet or something savory that you're like, oh wait, no, this is worth eating. I just got to figure out what actually made that taste. And this, spoilers, it's the lore in these movies. It's kind of fun.
I will interject about the lore, because after the first one, every movie opens with a retcon of Transformers history and how long they've been on Earth.
Oh, sure.
They all do that, because like in the first one's like, oh, it's the first time they're here. And the second one, like, actually, they've always been here. They've
been here for a while. Yeah.
The Fallen were here or whatever. Like they got here first and killed dinosaurs, or whatever. Then the Dark of the Moon, like they caused the moon landing. That's what it was. I really like that whole retcon. That storyline of like making us think that it was all a conspiracy, like that was fun. Oh my god. Yeah. So And then like they even go as far as to the Arthurian legend of like, oh, Transformers were here since the Knights of the Round Table.
Listen, it's fine. It's fine.
That's my favorite thing, because it's like, who cares? Let's get bold.
Right.
Arthurian legend is reality, and
Yeah.
the dragon was a giant robot.
Yes.
Whatever. What are you gonna do? I love it.
I mean, we have to talk about the last night moment where Anthony Hopkins, for one, is in this movie.
How? Did he owe someone a favor? Like, that has to, like, maybe he just wanted a vacation in London or something.
I bet he had such an awesome time in his 3 days every couple years on Thor, and I bet that paid so well that he just took whatever. Okay, I'll do Transformers. It's the same amount of. I actually do think he's doing a decent job in Thor, but like
he's actively like he's doing running sequences and stuff. He's very active in the last night when compared to Thor, where he was just kind of sitting there or
That's
like maybe
fair.
standing. But man, that was, how did they rope him into this? I love that they brought Stanley Tucci back to play young Merlin. That was amazing.
No.
That was amazing.
Danny, that's the most absurd. Okay, it's not the most absurd, because the reason I wanted to bring up Anthony Hopkins is because he revealed that there was a watch that he owned that killed Hitler and was a Transformer, which I just can't believe that is a thing that they decided to put in the movie for no reason other than so Hopkins can later in the movie bring same said watch to the Prime Minister of England and say, I'll kill you all with this motherfucker. Like, we didn't have to know that it killed Hitler for us to know that it was dangerous, and yet they left it in the movie.
Yeah, after 5 movies, they showed us any Transformer that any Transformer that shows up fresh is evil and wants to kill any human around. It's not until you decide to become an Autobot that you're not like a crazy psychopath robot. But when they turned an Xbox into a Transformer, that wanted to kill everyone around them.
Yes.
I maintain if it had kept going like that and they hadn't rebooted, a Decepticon would have framed Lee Harvey Oswald for the assassination of John Kennedy. Guaranteed. What are you going to do? Where could you go?
That was the trajectory that they kind of were taking, that like, oh yeah, by the way, historical like leaps in bounds in technology and like major historical events, it's all Transformers. It's just been covered up.
Anything significant that's ever happened was actually space robots.
Right, which is why John Turturro's character is so funny, because he has this conspiracy mindset from the get-go about Transformers having been here for forever and having done all of these things, and nobody believes him. And then for some reason, by the 5th movie, we've justified, oh no, he was right from the get-go. Every time he thought that something was happening because of the Transformers, it was totally true. Now that means that he gets to go on these wild escapades in 2 and 3 where he's, I don't know, off in Cuba, he's disgraced, he's working at a butcher shop, he's friends with a Transformer that lives in Cuba. Like, I don't know, I can't keep track of his storyline and where he bounced around, but he's very involved in 1, 2, and 3, and then 4 and 5, he's kind of just on the phone.
What's the one where he's literally running around in his underpants the entire movie? I feel like, or maybe there was a sequence.
I think it's the first one after he gets peed on. That changes brain chemistry.
Sure. Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Like completely. That's what made the character what it is. He was a normal person, but then you get Transformers pee on you, and that has consequences to it.
The voice line delivery of Bumblebee, "Stop lubricating the man." It's just, wow.
The fact that
there's something entertaining about these films. You shouldn't mainline them like Brian did, for sure.
Sure.
But they need just a little bit of editing. But go ahead, Mike. Sorry,
No. I was just gonna say, like, the fact that they got Peter Cullen to say these things is kind of absurd. Like, I felt like every single one of his line deliveries as Optimus is like the most inspiring thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Despite the whole world, in that moment when I'm watching the film, him saying, Autobots, we have to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, fuck yeah, we do. Yes, we fucking do, Optimus. Like, I'm fully inspired. I'm engaged in the movie. And then they'll immediately cut over to Shia LaBeouf or Marky Mark or whoever. And they're like, wait, what are you telling me? We got to do Optimus? Like, that's it takes me out of the moment.
That was a pretty good Marky Mark, I gotta say.
Listen, I'm not going to say that I haven't been working on it for 3 or 4 weeks, but I've been working on it for 3 or 4 weeks.
It was bad Texas accent, but it was a good Marky Mark.
Yes.
There is another great line of his in the 4th one when Marky Mark is complaining about his daughter, and Optimus just offhand goes, I went through that with Bumblebee. Just like, what? No, I want to hear more about Bumblebee's rebellious teen years. Fuck this whole movie.
Right. No, you're telling me you don't want to hear about more of the time when Bumblebee was in the middle of World War II and maybe was the deadliest killer known to all the Autobots?
He saved us.
Because I couldn't. I mean, he saved us. Yeah. So these movies, I know we're kind of jumping all over here, so I'm curious to know. So we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but like, what were some of the highlights of these movies for you guys as you were going through and revisiting these things? Obviously, there's a lot of bad to talk about, a lot of goofy things, but I feel like there's got to be some highlights for you. So, Danny, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think the highlight of this rewatch, I mean, as other than just seeing all these actors get paid insane amounts of money for being very goofy,
Yeah.
we got a Buzz Aldrin cameo in one of these, which is cool. Like, okay,
Yeah, in number 3.
like, the man is literally a national treasure, and you got him in your movie. But I think the idea behind the Dark of the Moon was just the best one. Like, it really felt like something way different. Revenge of the Fallen is a mess from the beginning to the middle to the end. It's all over the place. It's a mess. Also, why is there a Prime that's always evil? Whatever. But yeah, I think Dark of the Moon has just the best idea. Like that was the movie that I probably revisited, and it changed the way I remembered it. Because I remember not enjoying that one as much the first time around. Like when we were in, this might be saying, a little spoiler for the rankings, but this was pretty low on my list originally before the rewatch. And that completely changed from this one. So I gotta say that's probably it. And also, I'm a big fan of the slow-mo. You guys know I love Zack Snyder. So
Dude.
like, all this slow-mo transforming anytime, give it to me. Gears grinding, like all that.
Yeah.
Except for when they switch it with the Galvatronium or whatever in the fourth one.
The Transformium.
Yeah, Transformium.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I don't like them being pixels. I would need them to like have gears and shift and be like a puzzle that you have to put together.
Yeah. Kev, what about you?
I love all of the crazy legends that they have. Like, in discussing this, I had to mute my mic from laughing so hard because I realized that John Malkovich was in Dark of the Moon, and I found this image I'm posting in Discord chat, which is just one of the great images I've ever seen in my life. John Goodman as well, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Mind-blowing. The relief that Dark of the Moon was coherent, especially in revisiting everything. I took friends to Dark of the Moon the week it came out, and I was not allowed to pick movies for weeks. And I was the one who gave them free tickets also. So that was a little messed up. I loved so here's a big thing we'll talk about. Steven Spielberg executive produced these. I think has to be in name only after the first one, because holy moly. But the Spielberg vibe in both Transformers 1 and Bumblebee really stuck out to me on this watch, especially after the Fablemans, and we talk about him a lot on Austin Pod. The idea that it's some regular guy whose life is changed by something amazing. Now, there's no wonder in Transformers 1. It has all been replaced with Iraq War era military fetishism.
Sure.
But Bumblebee almost captures that the right way, while managing to include plenty of military fetish play with the John Cena storyline. So that really impressed me for what it's worth. And then the madness of The Last Night, which I watched yesterday morning in prep for the show, just the full on, what are you gonna do? Not make another one of these? What are you gonna do, audience? Not come to see it? I dare you. Of the craziness of Cogman and the Arthurian legend, the range is powerful.
They had a little stinger at the end for you to come back for the next one. Like they were setting stuff up with Quintessa as a human.
That's right.
In the at the end of the
I remember that. Yeah.
They were very cocky going into that last film that they were going to make more.
Yeah, but I guess to your point though, Kev, like there's a lot that does kind of work. And I mean, like Danny, you've said like some of this machinery stuff. So Brian, I'm curious to know, after you've mainlined a lot of these movies, what are your thoughts on in terms of highlights for these movies?
I made a post on Twitter about it. It's just like, these movies are like 30 minutes of the most dog shit writing you've ever seen. and then 3 minutes of the coolest, sickest robot violence imaginable. Because
Yes.
like I loved all of like the gnarly ass transformer designs for this, how they're all like jagged and very, very like machine. I
Mhm.
thought those all looked super cool, and all the action when there wasn't a human involved looked great. The CGI didn't hold up so well when you had like real stuff to compare it to,
Mhm.
but there were whole sequences where I'm like, this is just a very expensive cartoon that I'm watching, and
Yes.
I love it.
Totally.
There was I really liked in Dark of the Moon when they're doing all the like the conspiracy footage, and like that's how you disguise like bad person CGI, is slapping those like old-timey video filters on them. Because
Right.
like that looked like a very great Kennedy,
Mhm.
because you couldn't see it super well. But like it felt so natural. It didn't feel like they were trying to hide anything.
Mhm.
They were just successfully doing so while also fitting in like the aesthetic choice that they were going for.
Yeah, no, you definitely nailed it. I think like yeah, I mean, I could sit here and talk about the conspiracy stuff in Dark of the Moon all day because I felt like, again, spoilers for the rankings. I feel like number 3 is pretty high up on the list for a lot of us. That movie like finally gets it, and it's unfortunately like the end of an era in the Transformers like universe because they change actors, they change directions with the entire show or the entire thing. I guess like for me, what really worked is, Brian, you pointed it out, like the gnarly look of a lot of these Transformers is really cool. And like Danny, you were talking about, all the transforming moments are just so cool to watch. And every time they did it, it never felt old. I feel like in Bumblebee actually transforms the same way like 3 times. That kind of like weirdly stuck out to me. But with the exception of that, like all the transformation moments are really cool. They turn into these fucking cool cars. Like, I'm not a car guy, but clearly these cars look cool. They look like they belong in a Need for Speed game or something, or whatever racing game is popular. And they're like the best of the best, clearly sponsored, blah, 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 right? I thought that was really fun. There's a moment, I think it's in Age of Extinction, where Megatron like gets to pick a roster of baddies that he gets to take out with him, and they do like this stupid heist movie style introduction sequence where they're like, "I want this guy," and then we cut to that guy in jail, and he's like, "I'm gonna get the hell out of here and crush all you humans except for you, Steve. You're cool," or something like
That's
it's so
right.
dumb. And I was like, you know what, though? That works. That's funny to me. I don't think that movie is great, but I also found that moment to be extremely hilarious. And the fact that it went on for so long was kind of like a detriment to the bit itself. But like they gave Megatron like a moment to be not entirely the bad guy. And have like this fun, almost Suicide Squad moment where you're like, here are the villains and here are the good guys, and they're going to go head to head. And it felt like almost like a cartoon where you know the villains as well as the protagonists, so that when they go head to head, you kind of know what everybody's superpower is, so that when they fight, you're like, oh, he's got the chainsaw. Oh, it's not just we've turned our hands into guns and then we shoot at each other. I thought that was a fun little moment.
I don't remember this at all.
It's in last night.
It's when the lawyers show up, Brian. You know the
Oh, okay.
lawyers that go to the desert to
Yeah.
work on this deal, because the
Yeah.
They
lawyers
have
are
a
very
desk.
important.
There's a desk and they're on the phone. Hold on, let me see if we can call somebody. Like, it's so stupid.
I made a note that's like Decepticons versus lawyers. Okay, sure.
Yeah. Like, these are the moments that work in this series, whereas the rest of it is kind of like garbage, right? Like, I think I said in my notes, like, the lore and all of the Transformers stuff is actually fun. It's when they start adding these, like, we need to add a human layer to these stories,
Yeah.
that kind of becomes annoying because it takes away from what I'm actually here for, which is dumb robots fighting each other for some ridiculous reason that they've made up on the spot because this is a cartoon. Like, that is the thing that kills me about The Last Night, is that that's a dumb idea. But for the first 45 minutes, I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, let's ride this pony. I don't even care, because there's going to be some dumb reason for it. Or maybe it's Age of Extinction. I think it's 4 again, that actually has like, it feels like a cartoon for the first hour and some change. And then I go, Dad, you lost me when you started to make me care about Marky Mark. So I just wanted them to like just really figure out what made these movies work. And I think they got it in 3. And then 4 and 5, they fall apart. And they try to bring it back, I think, in Rise of the Beast. But there's, again, almost too much human element. and maybe too much. I want to say New York in it. I don't know.
Yeah,
There's
I definitely
there's
agree. Go ahead.
sorry, there's two really cool moments in all these films that I really love. Like I would have posters of these. When Optimus shows up riding on Grimlock for the first time ever.
Mm-hmm.
God, I love that moment. Just big splash page comic book moment right there. And
Yeah.
then when Anthony Ramos puts on Pete Davidson's character, I forget his name, Mirage, I think.
Yeah, Mirage.
When
Yeah,
he puts him
Mirage.
on, like, and I know this is a more recent movie, so sorry for the spoilers, but he puts on Mirage as an armor, and he's like this Iron Man type. Like, they're finally working together, fully connected together,
Mhm.
and that's the way you can kind of keep Mirage alive until until later on. But like, those were two of my favorite moments of the whole franchise that don't involve actor moments. There's a lot of actor moments that I just love throughout the whole thing, but pure Transformer stuff, yeah, Grimlock and oh man, I was so hyped for that. I love the last part of the fourth movie. I hate everything before that, but the last when the Dinobots are involved, I'm all in.
I was gonna say you're just here for the Dinobots. Okay,
That's what I went to
okay.
see. Yeah.
I will say I enjoyed Rise of the Beasts to kind of bring it to where we're at now with these movies.
Yeah.
But I do agree. I think, ironically, I think the issue is that there wasn't an extra 45 minutes of Energon lore.
Yes.
Because I think it's only just 2 hours, right? So
Yeah, it's a little over 2 hours.
they brought in the human comedy, which I don't. I love Sarah Stiles, who plays the curator of the museum,
Mhm,
but we're with her a long time. It's a lot, and I really would have loved more of the Autobot, the Beast Wars characters. I feel
Mhm.
like, to quote Marvel's hilarious Contest of Chaos ad, but to what end? Like, this is Beast Wars. For a generation of kids, this is the jam. These are the
Yeah.
characters. Are we just never going to see those characters again? Like, to what end?
Yeah, only two of them are actual characters, right? Nobody, like, the other two don't
Oh,
talk at all.
right.
It's only Michelle
Yeah.
Yeoh. Michelle Yeoh's character, who's the eagle, and then Ron Perlman's. Oh, Ron Perlman.
Ron Perlman.
Oh my God, Chef's Kiss.
Yeah.
Maybe the second voice acting next to Optimus Prime, of course.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You telling me you didn't love Pete Davidson just being Pete Davidson inside of a robot auto-tune machine?
I forgot that was him for all these months, and I lived a life of blissful ignorance until now.
Honestly,
Oh, boy.
one of my favorite Pete Davidson roles.
Yes, for sure.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It is just Pete Davidson.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think we can kind of focus a little bit in here on Rise of the Beast, because I think like that is probably the one in people's most recent memory. Like I thought the movie is interesting. Like, it has probably one of the better soundtracks of all of the movies, because they got to say, hey, nostalgia hit, which is great. I had no problem with it. I was surprised that there wasn't the typical Beastie Boys song. Instead, they pick a different Beastie Boys song for this movie. So, but yeah, this overall, like, it's a fun movie. I loved the scene with Mirage where Anthony Ramos' character is like stuck in the car. He can't go anywhere. The police are chasing after him. He's driving down this bridge. Mirage does his thing, which is very, very funny. Like, it's a good use of like, hey, this is the wacky thing that Mirage can do. Unfortunately, it doesn't really get played up too well for the rest of the movie, but it's a good moment. And I feel like the overall storyline for this is kind of okay. They Dragon Ball Z the entire story, where they're like, all right, we need to go to some place that has nothing on it, nobody's living on it, and we need to have this big huge fight. But like, I don't know, I think you're right though, Kev. There is this missing like time sink of lore that needed to get delivered to us for us to feel like we should care anything about this Unicron business that's happening in the movie. So I did feel like that was lacking.
The first time I've ever heard somebody say that this movie would have been improved by a 40-minute lore dump.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that exact same thing. I know it sounds crazy, but think about, we could have really used a Cogman.
No. Listen to me, you son of a bitch.
Where
I
is
will not
Cogman?
have that on this podcast.
This is
Welcome
a
to
Cogman
IRCV.
slander zone.
Yeah.
Danny, I want to hear your and Brian's thoughts a little bit about this before we get into the issue that is Cogman and maybe some of our low lights of these movies.
Look, Mirage's powers are cool, but he's no Hot Rod. Hot Rod can stop time with bubbles. What? I got to that in the last night. I was like, oh my, I didn't know that. That was
Yeah.
cool. But yeah, I grew up watching the Beast Wars cartoon, or
Mhm.
whatever it was called. So like, this was it for me. Like, this is what I was waiting for. And overall, I enjoyed the movie. I really like the post-credit stuff. Actually, I think that's gonna be a lot of fun. Or it's gonna be really bad. Either way, I'm in for it. Like,
Oh
I'm
yeah,
gonna
either
go
way, watching it, right? Like,
I'm gonna go check it out. But yeah, they just do so much cool stuff. I want to talk a little bit more about Bumblebee, the movie, and the character, because one of the things I hated about this whole franchise is that they damsel in distress Bumblebee a lot. Like,
mm,
he just gets he's at the bottom of every rung. He's the one that takes the brunt of it. They kill him for like most of Beast Wars, which is like, what the hell's wrong with you?
he just
And
got his own movie. That's why, Danny.
well, and that was so sad because when he gets to Earth, and then I forget the Decepticon that just takes out his voice box. He wants to kill him, but first he's gonna take his voice. You don't want to
Right,
talk to me,
right.
then I'll take your voice. Very Disney villain. Of I believe it was Starscream. I want to say it was Starscream, but yeah, man, Bumblebee just like he got like throughout the whole franchise,
Mhm.
but then he gets his moment usually at the end, but. I like him a lot as an Autobot, and I just think that we need to treat him better.
Okay, I'll come back to that in a minute. Brian, any any highlights for you?
I think that I ranked Rise of the Beast a lot higher than everybody else did.
Okay,
Just looking ahead in the notes. And I think it's because it didn't have the baggage of all the other movies' lore
sure.
dragging around. Like, I think that for a movie about, the Beast Transformers, probably should have featured them a little more heavily.
Sure, yeah.
Would have been nice to see more Beast Wars in my Beast War movie. I liked that I didn't have to remember anything about the other movies to enjoy it.
Sure. See, I genuinely thought that somehow this movie was going to end up being a prequel to John Turturro's Agent Simmons character somehow. Like maybe he changes, maybe Anthony Ramos' character changes his name, he becomes Simmons, and I was like, that would be a huge stretch, right? I appreciate that they didn't. I appreciate the stinger that they had at the end of this movie instead, because I feel like that's a much more fun twist on the entire Transformers franchise. But yeah, it was I feel that lack of weight kind of added a freeing element. It allowed this movie to be a little bit less, I think, intense in terms of like what was at stake. Obviously, it was still like end of the world because that's kind of what these are all about, with the exception
Yeah.
of Bumblebee. Well, Bumblebee even still is about the end of the world, but I feel like there was like there again just freedom to kind of reestablish characters as needed, introduce people without having to have like a where were you during the big Chicago fight, blah 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 stuff.
I also thought that Anthony Ramos's character was just the only human character that I liked.
Yeah.
Like, he felt like a decent guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I really did appreciate what's his name, Tobey Ngue, in the movie, who played like his buddy. He also has like a track in the movie who like all the movie was all the music in Rise of the Beasts was very period centric of like the mid 90s. But there is one song that they use in the climax by Tobey Ngue, and it's like a really cool like modern hip hop track that like they lined up with the orchestral like score that I thought was really fun. I don't know. He's a hip hop guy. He's really good rapper, I think, in my personal opinion. But I thought it was fun to have him in the movie, and then he also gets a track on the soundtrack. But let's wrap things up here with one final bit. I guess I do want to talk about some of the digs, some of the problems we have, and specifically, I want to talk about Mr. Cogman, a character that, in my opinion, makes no sense in the entire Transformers series because he's kind of just there as a robot man. He doesn't seem to transform. He's just there to deliver lore and be a butler who is absent-minded and also has all of the memory. What the hell?
I'm a Cogman apologist.
Danny.
I think he was a fun character. He's a pure psychopath. But I think that might be what happens after you hang out with Anthony Hopkins and his relatives for centuries. Your brain just degrades to that. I really thought it was funny when like he's the one that gets Anthony Hopkins to do stuff. And then also when he just takes the humans, he's like, "Come on, humans!" Like he's very disconnected from them because he doesn't know all these characters. I like
Sure.
Cogman apologist over here. I don't know if everybody else feels the same way, but that's my take on the Cogman.
I yelled at you earlier, Kev, so I need to hear your thoughts on this.
He represents single-handedly everything deranged and amazing about those last two Transformers movies, but specifically the last night. First of all, the voice acting is by by Mr. Carson from Downton Abbey, the great Jim Carter, who is giving a performance. I mean, he showed up, he said the stuff, and he left. That is the end of it. Why does he have to be there? No reason. They thought it would be cool to put a robot there. Whatever. He is so tangential to everything that is going on. I can't help but love Cogman because he's just a mess. He's a mess.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I feel like there was again, you said this is a writer's room style movie, right?
They
heavy quotes
put
here.
together half a dozen grown adults. And then we're like, look, we hired a couple. First of all, it was all obviously men who had written your least favorite nerd movies of the last 15, 20 years. And then they said, oh no, we have two women. And then they all got together and this is the movie.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I feel like Cogman as a character was supposed to have more importance in like, I think he was supposed to be like the Bumblebee character for the movie, and then they said, no, what if Bumblebee was the assassin? What if Bumblebee did everything? And he's just kind of been like this, I'm a cute little Bumblebee character for some reason. But I don't know, I just could not get over the fact that he existed and kept like trying to put Mark Wahlberg and I'm blanking on her name in a room. Yes,
it's Dora. Dora the Explorer, because that's the same person who played the character.
No. Laura Haddock. Laura Haddock is what I'm thinking of. Sorry. They kept trying to put Marky Mark and Laura Haddock together in these situations to be like, now kiss, like G.I. Joes and Barbies, right? Like, it made no sense. I
didn't expect a polo sequence in my Transformers movies, and that's her introduction to the franchise.
Yes. It's again, anyways, I don't mean to just like nitpick and be pissed about this movie, but the last night just made me so angry outside of the fact that the three-headed dragon was maybe the coolest Transformer of all times. That's it.
There's a reason that movie came out and we all just collectively took a break from Transformers.
Yeah. It's true.
In Last Defense of Cogman, he's no Skits and Mudflap. All right?
There you go.
Okay.
See, there are many worse robots. Who's that robot that Tom Kenny voices?
That's Skids.
That's Skids?
Yeah.
And I love to Tom Kenny and to Cogman. But come on.
Yeah. I guess
if that had come out now, there's no way Tom Kenny wouldn't have gotten canceled for that role.
He's like, I didn't write
because I was listening to it, I was like, holy shit, this is racist. My God.
That's true.
The amount of racist robots is more than one.
Yes.
I can see where there was a civil war in Cybertron.
There you go.
The last thing I want to say is, why at the end of Bumblebee did John Cena salute Bumblebee? Is it just because he found out he was a soldier?
It's because it's a movie for kids.
Because I feel like I paid attention to that movie and I couldn't figure out when John Cena's character came around on Bumblebee until like the final moment when he says, nah, I'm going to let him go. And then he salutes Bumblebee and Bumblebee salutes him back. And that's like the end of the movie. It's weird.
John Cena was there to put Bumblebee over and he did it. All right.
I guess.
Because these movies are jingoistic military propaganda.
Yeah. I'll give you
that. There's so much of it. Like, there's less now, but there's still so much of it.
The Transformers movie may have, like, definitely funded a large part of the Iraqi war. I think that's kind of what the conclusion I'm coming to is, given that all the military stuff has to be, like, approved by a special division of the military in the United States before they use it. Like, Michael Bay clearly has, like, a very close handshake contract with someone over there to be like, hey, making a movie, I can promise you $20 million. And they go, cool, whatever you need, Mike. So
you know what though? If I was in the military, like, I would want that job. Like, I get to work in Hollywood and look at all these movies. Okay.
And not get shot at.
All right.
Exactly. Sign me up.
It's also pretty damning, like, to the involvement of the plot, to the military stuff's involvement with the plot. Just get through that sentence. That we haven't said the words, we're wrapping up here. We haven't said the words Tyrese Gibson once.
That is true.
And he's like,
that is true.
He's in more than one of these, right? Like, he's in a bunch of these.
He's in like 3 or 4
he's in
of them.
the first trilogy, right?
Yeah, at least 3.
But what is he doing?
He's the link between this and the Fast and Furious films.
Right.
Why hasn't that crossover happened?
Just you wait.
That is like so on the table. It's easy. It's like rotten, right? Like how do the Fantastic Four? How do the Fast and the Furious guys not drive Transformers? Like, come on, that seems like
I want the scene of Vin Diesel telling Bumblebee, "No, let me drive, Bumblebee. I know you're a Transformer machine, but I'm a better driver."
Right.
Cogman versus The Rock.
See, this might bring me back around on Cogman, I think. Okay, well, we do have to wrap this entire shindig up. It's been a very momentous thing. Apologies if none of this made sense to you at home. I hope you watched all the Transformers movies before you got this far. Paul, who's proof listening today, is just shaking his head and shrugging. It sounds like it might have been a little bit of nonsense. But before we finally end the show, I got to know, we have to rank these movies. So I guess I'm going to start with Brian. Let's get your overall rankings of these movies. I know we numbered them in the doc, but if you could try to list them out as you go, that'd be helpful.
Yeah. My top one was the first one, Transformers. I think we were all in agreement there, or nearly. After that, it was number 7. It was Rise of the Beasts, because I think it was because neither one of those movies had required reading for it. After that was 3, which surprised me, because in my head I remember thinking that like Dark of the Moon was like one of the worst Transformers movies, and I think I just had it mixed up with the second one in my head. Because after 3, I put number 4. We got the Marky Mark trilogy in order, 4 and 5. Trilogy, duology,
yeah.
Felt like 3 movies.
It's about as long as 3 movies, yeah.
And my final slot goes, of course, to number 2, because I hated almost every minute of that experience. This was before I realized that if I rented the movies on YouTube, I could watch them at 1.5 times speed.
Smart.
Which is the way to watch these, by the way, because it's so much fun to watch everybody like scamper around at 1.5 times speed. And I forgot to watch Bumblebee for this.
Okay,
so
that's fine.
I don't know where that should fall in my ranking.
Well, we'll follow up next time you're on the show and see if you've had a chance to watch Bumblebee.
I won't.
Okay.
We appreciate the honesty.
Thank you. Well, Danny, let's go to you. Then we'll go to Kev. Then we'll go to me, and we'll get this whole show wrapped up. So, Danny, go ahead.
Sure. So, Dark of the Moon is my favorite. Well, it's at the top. I don't know about my favorite. Sure. Then it's the original one. Then we have Bumblebee. I really love Bumblebee. Like, not just the character, but like the movie itself. Haley Steinfeld, like John Cena, anything he's on, like he's just so funny.
Sure, yeah.
Then Age of Extinction is very close with Beast Wars. So it's Age of Extinction at 4th place. I love Dinobots. Like I said, I didn't care for my note says everything before the Dinobots show up is garbage. But I love them so much that they were very underutilized in The Last Night. That also angered me. And then Beast Wars, like if there had been more Beast Wars in it, like, or Beast characters, I would have probably been higher on the list. Dark of the Moon sucks, but it doesn't suck as bad as The Last Night. It is the Last Night is a series of vignettes and scenes stapled together. It's not even a movie.
You tell me you don't love that they introduced a bunch of kid characters and then immediately dismissed them all?
The twist that the Earth was Unicron was like, what the fuck are you talking about? We've been at this for 5 movies and this is the first time you bring it up. And then I love the I'm gonna make Optimus Prime evil by giving him a dark spot on his face.
Give him a little kiss.
He's evil. But then Bumblebee's voice come back and he breaks out of his trance. That was actually a nice moment. But everything else in this movie was garbage.
I love when a squid rides around in my body that started as an arm piece and then the actor and directors couldn't figure out what they wanted to do with it. So I don't know. Kev, tell us your rankings here.
All right, real quick. Obviously, Dark of the Moon is number 1. The original is number 2. Again, these are the ones where you can at least see it. You can see what they were getting at under the pile of CG bolts and literal urine.
And swinging robot ball sacks.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's right. We'll get there. Then I put the Rise of the Beasts at number 3. It's
Okay.
again, like I said, I needed a bit more of that lore flavor, but I think the human angle is good. And I think, although I don't know how I feel about Hasbro tying two brands together without giving it away too much, we'll see how that turns out. They have to get the other brand right first, I think, before they do it. But
Right.
there's a lot of potential.
There's some comics that I could show you that might help you understand that, but we'll talk about that after the show.
We'll talk about that. Yeah. I'm here for it. Then I have, look, I love movies that are huge messes, right? Southland Tales is a movie that people hate that I'm infamous for enjoying. I thought Damien Chazelle's Babylon last year was really great. So it's no surprise, I guess, that my number 4 is The Last Night, which is a heaving mess, exhausted with itself, shocked you're even there. Like, again, they brought a room full of adults together, and that's the movie they put out. So then I have Bumblebee, which is like a fun adventure movie. It's a great family movie. Really on the nose, but this franchise desperately needed it. And then Age of Extinction, and then Rise of the Fallen, which I think is one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Yeah. Okay.
Barely even a movie.
I mean, you're telling me that a regular guy with a little bit of military access can't just go sleep next to the pyramids for a night just in case the world ends with his girlfriend, who they may or not be, broken up or not? I don't know.
Look, the writer strike hurt us all in different ways. And one of those ways was Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. So
yes. Okay. Well, let me get to my rankings here then. I love Dark of the Moon. The conspiracy stuff just like scratched an itch, and I'm glad it all worked out and kind of like is a fun ending to Shia LaBeouf's trilogy on the series, and it still managed to be fun despite the ridiculousness of a new girlfriend who was whatever. I liked it. The original Transformers, great movie. It's fun. It's better than many of the other Transformers movies. The next I've got is Bumblebee. Despite all of my problems with it, I actually liked what it did. It's very, like you said, family friendly. It's an easy movie that I could just drop in front of someone and say, hey, let's watch this dumb Transformers movie, and they probably have a good time. Next I've got Rise of the Beasts. I like this movie better than the other 3. That's all I can really say, because the next one I have is Age of Extinction, followed by Revenge of the Fallen, and finally The Last Night, because I just I can't stop being frustrated about Cogman. That's all that it comes down to. So that's my ranking here. So I appreciate you guys spending the time to talk to me today about Transformers. I dare not risk it, but final thoughts. Any last things you guys want to get out before we finally call this a close?
I just wanted to ask who everyone's favorite Autobot was to kind of end on a more bright and positive note. I can kick it off because as much as I love Dragonstorm and Grimlock because they look cool, Hound, as voiced by John Goodman, is my favorite Autobot. The fact that they give Autobots like beards with like metal hanging out, and he's always got a missile in his mouth as he's smoking up. And also, he just kind of keeps dropping them, like, because who doesn't love a good fart joke? Like, yeah, John Goodman can't do no wrong, and Hound is my favorite Autobot. So, but I don't know if you guys have a favorite one in all these movies.
Kev, go ahead. If you have
I think Ratchet gets shortchanged by these films and then dies, sadly.
Unceremoniously, yeah.
Pretty lame, I think, death for Ratchet. But I love I'll go Ratchet.
Okay. Brian, what about you?
I don't know. I couldn't really tell them apart most of the time.
That's okay. You can just say Optimus. It's fine. We'll just say Optimus for Brian. How about
Sure.
that? For me, I'm going to say Day Trader. Basically the dumbest cameo in the entire series, as Steve Buscemi shows up for a bit scene he's a guy that trades Transformer parts with other people. That's all I'll say. It's a funny moment, and they just, if you had put the two characters of Day Trader and Danny's character, who I am blanking on the name of,
Hound.
Yes, if you put them side by side on screen, you would not be able to tell them apart, which is why I'm glad that he didn't stick around. But it is a funny moment in the movies, even though that movie sucks. So anyways, I guess we're going to wrap up here. I'm so exhausted, but I really appreciate you guys walking through all this with me. Kev, for the folks at home who want to check out more of what you're talking about with movies, I promise it's a much more organized show, I think, on your end. Where can people find the Austin Danger podcast, and what are you and Mackenzie up to these days?
I don't know about that. Yeah, you can find me on letterboxd.com/Kev, Kev. That's probably the best place at this point. Austin Danger Podcast comes out Mondays. Our Haunting in Venice episode is available now. Again, next week, I'm not going to spoil the wheel spin, but it's a very spooky movie from this century, so very excited. I also want to say Skybound, Sean Mankiewicz, Robert Kirkman, if you're listening, I have a Cogman miniseries pitch for you. I'm not going to give it away for free, but I have a great 6-issue Cogman. You want to put him in Void Rivals for 3 months as a launch pad? We can negotiate. I'm here for it.
Amazing. Cool. Well, to wrap up here, as always, you can find us on the internet. You can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/IRCB podcast, as well as on our Instagram at IRCB podcast, as well as TikTok. We've got a Discord where you can have more conversations with us and talk more about Transformers and other things with us. We've got our Goodreads. We've got our YouTube channel that's run by our good friend Danny that's here. As always, Infinity Shred is the best band in the universe. They do all of our music. Xander traveled through time, through the center of the black hole, and survived. I want to say thank you to Brian and Danny and Paul for being here. I'm all out of sorts. Next week's episode, if you're listening this late in the credits, it's going to be me and Kara and Kate talking about Transformers comic, and we're going to see, we might be getting some Daniel Warren Johnson comic access. We'll see about that. But until next time, comics are good, and so are you.